Hello fellow book lovers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be reading the first chapter of my humorous fantasy novel The Rose Thief, so I really hope you enjoy listening to it. Here's the book. Chapter 1. He, or very possibly she, was known as the Rose Thief. It was a nickname that stuck despite the best efforts of the thief catchers to stem public approval for a thief who only stole roses. No one had yet admitted to knowing who, or indeed what, the thief was. He could indeed be a woman, or a troll, or even a malevolent spirit. What was of great significance and importance was that only the Emperor, may he live forever and ever, Rose Garden was being violated. The thief was stealing exclusively from the Emperor, may he live forever and ever, and no one but the Emperor, may he, you get the idea, had access to the Rose Gardens. Not even any of his 1,001 wives. It made solving the theft extremely difficult. It also made the Emperor look rather foolish, and was the reason why thief-catcher Ned Spinks was strung up by his ankles in the third-best reception room of the Emperor's palace. Ned was waiting to see what would happen next, and to amuse himself in the meantime was tracing rude shapes in his imagination with the dark stains on the floor beneath him. "Do you know why you're here?" The high-pitched nasal voice came from the direction of Ned's right knee. It was the High Right, the Honourable Lord Chamberlain. Ned tried to swing round a little so he could at least speak to the ankles of the High Right, but he had no turning circle. The blood pooling in his head was beginning to make it hard to think coherently. He decided against his usual witty repartee. "It's my turn?" "Well, maybe just a little, to lighten the mood." The High Right ignored Ned's response. "The Emperor, may he live for ever and ever, wants this so-called thief of roses caught. Now." "I'll see what I can do, sir." The High Right did not respond, and remained behind Ned, making him uneasy. Due to the voluminous nature of his shirt, a large proportion of Ned's back was on display, and he didn't think it was necessarily his best side. Feeling rather vulnerable, he was now thoroughly convinced that love handles were not meant to sag upside down. Gravity was not doing him any favours. He lurched unexpectedly as he was cut down and crashed to the floor in an inelegant heap of slightly overweight thief-catcher. Shaking the stars from his head, Ned winced as the blood rushed back down his body and made his ears ring. At least he still had his ears. The last time the Emperor took a dislike to the chief thief-catcher, the High Left Inquisitor carved most of his body parts off. Ned counted his fingers and toes surreptitiously. "You have one day, thief-catcher." The High Right glared at Ned, who had reached a count of at least 8 digits. "Don't let me regret not ordering the removal of your eyeballs." Ned heard rather than saw the High Right leave. His head was still adjusting to being the right way up, and despite the leg count, Ned wasn't entirely sure he had active control over his limbs. Standing had yet to be attempted. A rather loud conversation began filtering through the third-best reception room doors, which were ajar. "I don't care what you think, I'm going in to get him." A small, grubby-looking child with a mop of straw-like hair marched into the room, wearing an air of nonchalance which soon deflated into obvious relief at seeing Ned in one piece. 2 palace guards peered in, saw that the High Right had finished, and decided to mind their own business for once. Palace guards excelled at minding yours. It was a strenuous part of training. You couldn't be a palace guard if you didn't know what your next-door neighbour's aunt had for tea last Thursday. The small child wasn't a child at all. She was a dirty little sprite, with large hairy ears and a coppery-coloured tail just visible from the bottom of her filthy red coat. She peered into Ned's face. The smell that accompanied her was otherworldly. "Jenny, a little space." Ned tried not to breathe. Jenny huffed, hurt at the not-so-warm welcome. "Be like that, then. I only came straight here to find you and get you out of whatever mess you're in now." She leaned in again, utterly disregarding Ned's request for personal space, and looked deep into the bloodshot yet still vibrant blue eyes of her boss. "Joe said you were scooped." Ned pushed himself up from the floor, trying in vain to ignore the incredible smell infiltrating his nostrils. "Yep, lucky me." He staggered a few steps before collecting his limbs and walking towards the door. Jenny capered at his side. "You need a bath, Jenny. You stink." "Been undercover at the docks, ain't I?" A few flies buzzed in Jenny's wake. "'Cause we thought he might be basing his operations round that way, right? So I've been looking for the Rose Thief, ain't I?" She scratched an armpit viciously. "Came straight here, though, didn't I? When Joe said, "Yeah, thanks. What about the docs? What did you find out?" Ned held the third best reception room door open for Jenny and jauntily saluted the guards in the corridor as they walked through. "Any luck?" "Just a pile of shite." "Well, I can smell that." "Nah, a proper pile of rose shite. That special stuff what makes them grow." Jenny jabbed her thumb over her shoulder at the palace receding behind them as they exited through a side gate. "And it ain't theirs." "Whose was it then?" "Dunno. Didn't exactly speak to the owner. There weren't much left, right, and it was in one of them hire when you need bit of spaces. You know, the ones Two-Faced Bob hires out. It dried a bit and that, but it was definitely shite." She beamed up at Ned. "So even though I didn't find nobody, I still done good, right?" Ned nodded, then winced as his upside-down headache kicked in. "Could be Two-Faced Bob is involved. We'll have to have a little chat with him." He tried to make a mental note to investigate the dockyards further, whilst ignoring the hammers in his head. The unlikely pair walked down Palace Lane, back to headquarters at the Noose. They did not notice the wide berth the Great Unwash gave them, which goes to show that even the down-and-outs in Roshaven have some standards. Headquarters wasn't the real headquarters. The official residence of the thief-catchers over on Justice Heights burned down in 2004 after a nasty disagreement with the Guild of Organised Flame. It was rebuilt twice before the then chief thief-catcher took the hint and upped sticks. These days, anyone who wanted to find a thief-catcher visited the Noose, a delightful little hostelry that perched jauntily on the edge of the aptly named Black Narrows. If by delightful you mean grime-encrusted walls, floors and ceiling, a barman who'd sooner shoot you than serve you, and a clientele that lacked a certain respectability, then yes, the Noose was extremely delightful. As for the Black Narrows, they were definitely black. Some say it was because that was the only colour of stone left in the quarry. Others say it's because of all the evil committed in the Narrows has stained the streets with blackness. And they were certainly narrow. So narrow they were a pickpocket's dream. No one went into the Black Narrows voluntarily, unless they were naive tourists or had the misfortune to live there. And if you did live there, no one went out in the Narrows at night, unless they absolutely had to, and even then they tried to get out of it. Of course, for some, it was part of their professional workload to be in the Narrows, especially at night. It was one of those places, a tourist honey trap for people seeking danger, and suitable living conditions for those wishing to cause the danger. All in all, it was the perfect location for Thief-Catcher HQ. Anyone who was that serious about needing a thief-catcher clearly had the funds for the job, and no one, not even the Guild of Organised Flame, was brave enough to try and destroy the Noose. They'd rather be hung, drawn and quartered. Reg, the Noose's resident barman, he never ever left, nodded in greeting as Ned entered through the concealed side door. It was the shortest route to the rickety stairs that lurked in the rear of the saloon, where the gloom was deepest, knee-high and thick as treacle in places. "Anything?" Ned asked. Reg acted as a surly doorman for the thief-catchers. He let everyone in, regardless of whether they were welcome or not, but he was supposed to let Ned know in advance if he let people through when no one was around, especially anyone connected with the current rose thief investigations. Up. Reg didn't believe in conversation, or indeed sentences with more than one word. They were unhealthy and contagious. The Noose's patrons were of a similar mind, except on Thursdays when Yvette von Strunkel performed her weekly show. Then many rich and colourful words were shouted, often hoarsely, by short, hairy men in large overcoats who bought their own peanuts and drank copious amounts of the vilest liquor available. Ned nodded his thanks and began the treacherous climb. 1 in 5 steps were missing, and those that remained were so old and rotten that putting any weight on them was risking a broken limb. Ned tried to look at it as a deterrent for time-wasters. You had to really want the thief-catchers to climb these stairs. As they skirted the mattress at the top of the stairs, Ned noticed the door to the thief-catcher office was ajar, a shadowy figure visible through the frosted glass. Ned put an arm out to slow Jenny down and went first, a catch spell on quick release from the supply in his spellcaster belt. As soon as he saw who it was, he relaxed. Bob's 2 noses wrinkled as Jenny's fragrance filled the office. The sprite stood behind Bob and stuck her tongue out rudely. The face on the back of Bob's head retaliated by hawking and spitting snotty phlegm at the sprite. She dodged it easily and began to make one of her own. Jenny, enough. Nod plonked himself down wearily in the nearest chair. "Two-Faced Bob, what can I do for you?" Both faces smirked and spoke in unison. It's not what you can do for me, Spinks. It's what I can do for you, for a price. And that is, I know who the roast thief is. Yeah, scoffed Jenny. What you got stinking in your warehouse by the dock then, eh? We know all about that and all. Jenny. Ned leaned back in his chair, putting his battered boots up on the corner of his battered desk before responding to Two-Face. Why come to me? Why not report it to the palace yourself? Two-Face Bob walked over to the small window and peered out, looking up and down the street, before turning back to Ned and rubbing his hands. Pay me first, then I'll tell you everything I know. This is a big one, right? At least 4,000 gold bits. Ha! 4,000 gold? You must be joking. Not even the Emperor has that kind of cash just lying around. May he live forever and ever, whispered the rear head of Two-Face Bob. We already know it's you anyways. What are you talking about bits? You ain't getting no bits, said Jenny, but Two-Face Bob ignored her. I know you got scooped up, and I know you've got a deadline. He jerked a thumb over his shoulder at the sprite, who was picking her nails in disinterest. I doubt the pixie will be much help. Sprite, Ned corrected him. What? She's a sprite, and unless you have any hard evidence you'd like to leave with the thief-catcher's office, get out of my sight. Two-Face Bob turned so that his faces could scowl at both Ned and Jenny before he stalked out of the room and banged the door shut. 4,000 gold bits. Ned shook his head. You believe that guy? Moving his head was a bad idea. It reawakened the killer headache he'd been trying to ignore, and Jenny Stink was starting to make his eyes water again. You go get clean. Come straight back and fill me in again on what you found. He pulled open the drawers of his desk, searching for something, anything, that would clear his head. He opted for the half bottle of scumble he'd been saving for a rainy day. Jenny clattered and banged in the small bathroom next door, while Ned reviewed the case so far. If you'd like to know more, The Roast Thief is available in paperback and ebook on Amazon. Just search mybook.to/roast thief. Don't forget, if you do read a copy, please leave me a review, and I will see you next time.